Cool. All right. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. So we have another stream of mission briefing. Mission briefing is where we like to bring folks from either the Apollo team or in the development community at whole onto the stream and have them show us something awesome. And today we have something really awesome. We're going to be looking at securing GraphQL APIs with Auth0. And here to kind of walk us through that and show us through that is Sam Julien. He's a developer advocate at Auth0, and he is our guest for today. Thank you for
Hey, hey,
joining us.
hey.
Yeah.
I am thrilled to be here.
Yeah, we are absolutely thrilled to have you. I can't wait. So I'm very excited about this topic in particular, authentication. And yeah, so I can't wait to see what we're going to do. In a second, I'll have you kind of just walk us through that. But real quick, before we dive into that, I just wanted to lead with if anybody is interested about myself or Sam, our links to our Twitter accounts are in the panels below under the streamers, who's streaming now. And yeah, so give us a follow if you want to stay up to date on things like what we're about to do today. Cool. So yeah, with that said, and the self-marketing out of the way, do you want to dive in and maybe tell us a little bit about this project and what we're going to do today?
Yeah. So what we're going to do here is we've got a GraphQL API using Apollo server, and then
Okay.
we've got a React app using Apollo client,
All right.
and we have basically a, a little API with habits, and each habit, it's a habit tracking app, and you can add entries to it and things like that. And so our mission today is that we have basically the bosses told us that we want to protect one of the resolvers. So we need to add
Okay.
auth to both the front end and the back end. And so that's what we can walk through. We're going to use Auth0 to lock down the add habit, the create habit resolver, basically. So we'll add a login button to the React app and protect the add habit like form input, and then we'll also go to the server side and have it receive a token and then check if the user's authenticated, and if so, then let them run that create habit mutation.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, just like a quick recap, what we're going to be working with, it looks like, is a GraphQL API where part of it's publicly exposed, part of it needs to be authenticated to be able to access, right? Which is a very common pattern that you see, opposed to another pattern that is pretty common, which is where maybe you have a GraphQL API where nothing's meant to be public, so the entire thing is behind authentication. And so then you wouldn't, that might change a bit of how you would structure this, but for this particular use case, right, for our requirements, we have some public and some private.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like sometimes you want to have like the key difference. So when you have a REST API, you have multiple endpoints, and so it's easy to add auth to certain endpoints because you can just slap a middleware on that endpoint and just say like protect, this route. But with GraphQL, it's a little bit more complicated because you just have the one endpoint with the different queries and mutations. So if you need to selectively add auth, then there's some different approaches to that. If you don't want to just lock down the entire endpoint,
Right.
you have to get a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, yeah, a little more creative. And so it seems that Auth0 allows us to do this. We can accomplish this goal with Auth0. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it actually, having an auth service actually works really well with GraphQL because GraphQL is really more of a layer on top of your data. It doesn't necessarily need to be concerned with proving the identity of the user. So whether or not you're using Auth0 or something else, it kind of makes sense to keep the login portion, the like authentication part,
Yeah.
outside of the GraphQL side of things, and then just bring in the token to the GraphQL side and let let that like take it from there with the authorization side of things.
Okay, cool. And I take it that's what it can expect for today, right? That's essentially what we'll walk through.
Exactly.
Love it. All right, very cool. So yeah, I guess like without further ado, I guess we'll jump over to so if let me drop a link in the channel. So if anybody else is interested in finding out more about Auth0, you can go right to their website, and they have lots of information. I've also pinged in the chat. If you have any questions for Sam, drop them in here, and we'll try to get to them. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, without further ado, I think we can now move on to the app. I would say it'd be cool to kind of go through the architecture, both a little bit of client and server, and then we can go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. And then we'll come back to the Auth0 setup side.
Cool.
So let's just do a quick look at the
Auth0. Thanks
code.
For the follow. Nice.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, right. Cool. Okay, so what we have here is we have a habit tracker. So an app that is going to help you track like building habits. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's only partially complete. Right now we have the ability to just add a new habit in view. Then we haven't added anything about adding entries to the habits.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so the idea is we have the ability right now to like anybody can just add a new habit to this. But what we want to do is lock that down so that the users could see the habits but only be able to add them if they were logged in.
Got it. Okay. Sounds great to me. So let's go so let's do this. We'll look at the code, and I guess what we'll do is, well, I'll let you guide. Where do you think we should start? I'll follow you.
Yeah, you want to?
Yes.
You follow me on here? Yeah, so I'll just pull up.
Yeah, and so anything you do, I should see it should open on here. So let's go cool. VS Code.
Man, so cool. So cool.
It's so cool. And while he's doing that, he is running his local Apollo GraphQL server on his machine and the front end client. But he shared those ports with me, those servers, and so that's how we have them working in the browser, which is just so trippy to me.
Yeah, it's like a whole new world of pair programming.
Oh man,
it's pretty amazing.
Insert Aladdin song. A whole new world, right?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, let me close out all these windows and just,
because all I got right now is a README, which is probably the last.
You've got the README open. Okay.
So if you open something new,
so we have.
I should see it.
Yeah. So we have the let's pull up let me just open up the server.js really quick.
Cool. All right. So it's working. Yeah, we're
show
good.
up on your side.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man, that's so cool.
I know.
Okay, so this is a real straightforward Apollo server right now. There's nothing too crazy. We have our type definitions and resolvers in some separate files over here. And the way this works, I'll open up the models file. Basically, instead of having a real database, we have a just sort of like in-memory simulated ORM where we can just create, update, delete everything. And so this is sort of our base layer. It's just in memory. And then in our resolvers, I'll open up the resolvers. The resolvers then, just like if you were to have a regular database, I've imported the the models as DB.
Okay.
And that way for our resolvers, we can do things like db.getHabits or db.addHabit.
I love it.
This create habit is the one that we're going to lock down. We're going to say like, hey, if you're not authenticated, then you shouldn't be able to add a habit.
Okay.
And then so that's the server side, and I have that running with NodeMon. So whenever we make a change, it'll just update for us.
Great. Gotta love NodeMon.
And then on the client side, it's the development experience now of like doing full stack stuff in JavaScript has gotten so good, and this isn't even using TypeScript yet, so it's pretty nice. So then the client side is also pretty straightforward. Let me open Right now, index.js is just the Apollo client wrapped around the app. And then app.js has our habits query and our little loading and error state here, and our add habit. So what we want to do is we want to add a login here, and we want to put this add habit behind a check for being authenticated.
Got it.
That's our end goal.
Okay.
But we want to leave the habits list
Right.
as like publicly available.
Okay.
So we can dive into either side of things first. Do you think you want to do the client side or the server side first?
Let's do the server side first. Let's get our API secure, and then
Cool.
we'll
Yeah,
update the client to match that.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good.
Cool.
Looks like okay.
Sounds
So
like
the first
fun.
thing, before anybody can do anything, you have to set this up in Auth0. So we should just show really quick like where you would do that. I've already got this configured for my Auth0 client and everything, but we should just kind of show where that is in the dashboard. If you just want to go back over to.
Oh yeah, so let's jump over. Boop. Oh, wrong one. Ha. Not boop. That's the boop. Okay. So in the dashboard, so I am now in the dashboard. So if I wanted to set this up, I would create a new application.
Yeah, so the client side will be an application. So you would click create application.
Right. So create application.
And it'll ask you for a name and the type of application it is. So you could put in habit tracker client or something. And hit single page app.
Cool. And then hit create.
And then hit create.
Boom. So I got a client ID and a quick start.
Yep. So if you just click on, so it'll let you look at the quick start straight from there, or you can click on the settings tab there.
Ah, look at this. There we go.
Yeah, so that lets you just like get up and running with the React quick start right away. And then inside of the client, you would configure, there are a few things you would configure. We don't necessarily need to do that right now since we've already got it set up. But basically we need to wire up that localhost 3000 for our client. We just have to set up the app to be able to recognize it. So we have to set up like our callback URLs and logout URLs and things like that. So if you, so that's all in the React Quick Start, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just a couple of fields you got to fill out.
Where do you want them to go when they log out, right? And like, where should they go after login? What's the URL where you're going to capture that information? And then like the login URI, like where they're actually going to be logging in from. And I would imagine that this info is just used for security purposes to make sure that it's going to the right place and everything is.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're telling Auth0 like where to expect it to be receiving requests for tokens from, basically. So in our case, because we're using Create React App, it's running on localhost 3000, and so we're just telling it, hey, only accept requests from localhost 3000. So if we were to run it on a different port, it would reject the request for the token, and we'd have to change it.
Okay.
So that's the client side, and then if you click back to applications, actually no, don't click that. Click on the APIs on the left. There's an APIs like icon.
Yeah.
So we would do the same thing.
Create
We'd click on the API. We do create API, and you would give it a name, and then the identifier. It's a URL format, but it doesn't have to be a real URL. It can be like whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
It's just in the HTTP format.
So for the name is in this format?
No, the name is just a regular. Just call it whatever you want, like Habit Tracker API, and then the identifier, which gets used as the audience later, is like HTTP/my API or whatever you want to call it.
I got it. That's interesting. Okay. All right. So I've got that, and I've got my signing algorithm set. So I'm good to go, right?
Yeah, you can leave the signing algorithm as the default
Yeah,
for
yeah.
that.
Boom. Now I got an API.
Yeah. And so,
Sweet.
and that's like basically it. There's a lot of other settings you can customize, but just for
Right.
getting up and running, like that's all you have to do. And so now we have uh, an API and a client, and we'll just configure the applications to use them.
Yeah, and so this is kind of where we're going to pick up now, like on the code side, because now we just need to
Right.
say, hey, server and client use these different APIs from Auth0, and we'll be all authenticated, and everything will be sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
if we hop back over to the code,
Should I keep the dashboard open? Are we done in the dashboard, or do you think we'll pop
I
back
think
in here?
we're done since it's already configured for my
Right.
stuff. Like we won't have to get back there,
Okay.
so we can close
All
that
right.
out.
Cool. So let's do that, and we're going to jump back to the code, right? Okay.
Yep.
And here we are. Oh, that's what that's for, that audience. That's the. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I've provided like some examples. I have like my stuff already in the real.m, but for both the server and the client, you basically will create a little .m file to put these variables in the uh, like process.env. So uh, on the server side, you just provide the domain, which is your tenant for Auth0, and then the audience, which is that identifier that we just created.
Okay.
And then on the client side, in your .env, so create React app comes with .env already, but you have to prefix things with React app. So you'd have
Yeah.
your Auth0 tenant, and then the client ID, which is that big long string for the client, and then the same audience identifier for the API. And that basically tells it like, basically what this does is it says, hey, I want an access token for this particular API,
Got it.
and then Auth0 uses that identifier to create a token for that API.
Got it. Got it.
So
Um,
so that's the
fun little
yeah.
fact: Gatsby does the same thing with .env, but you have to preface it with Gatsby instead of React
Oh,
app.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should probably point out, I'll pull up the package.json because I've sort of cheated a little bit just to save us some time,
Yeah.
but so I've already got .env installed.
Okay. Yeah,
I've
which is
also got
fine. Yeah.
we're actually not using express JWT. I can get rid of that, but JSON Web Token and the JWeeks RSA are the other two packages that you would need for what we're about to do.
Got it. And so to clarify, the JWeeks RSA is for signing of tokens or like un.
No, it's for, oops, sorry, I've got the wrong package.json up. So what happens is Auth0 is going to handle the creation of the tokens.
Okay.
It'll create both the ID token and the access token. So the ID token will have like the profile information that the client will use. So we'll show that when we get to the client.
Got it.
And then the access to what's going to happen is our React app's going to call Auth0 and ask for both an ID token and an access token for the API. And then it's going to attach that access token to our request to come to the server.
Got it.
And then what we're going to do on the server side is verify that token. We need to make sure that it came from
Right.
the right place and that it's legit. And if so, that means we're like logged in and we can serve up the data. So what this JSON web key format, JSON web key set is what JWKS stands for.
Okay.
This is what happens when you so if you have, I don't know how deep we want to get into like the cryptography side, but basically, when Auth0 creates a token, it does it with a private key, and then it has a public key that you can use to verify it. And so this is what the JSON web key set for, is to go get that public key. And actually, why don't we just well, we'll get there. But yeah, we use the public key to verify the token. So let's let's go ahead and open the server, because what we want to do here is we want to intercept the request in the context, basically, and verify the token in the context.
Right.
And that way, when this is how we can get around not locking down the entire endpoint, basically, because we can create a context. So let's just go ahead and start. We can create a context, and oops. And what we'll have is we'll have access to the request in that context. And so, and then we're probably going to need to make this async, because we're going to have to verifying the token is going to end up being asynchronous.
And so, just real quick to pause here for just 1 second, for anyone who might not be familiar, what context is, it allows you to essentially have a place for storage for things like the request that comes through, authentication information, maybe models and like access to DBs or like underlying APIs. And this context object will become available in all of the resolvers, which is where where we actually write the code that a GraphQL API will try to fetch or serve or mutate depending on what the request was. And so like this is a cool way to be able to just pass information all the way down the graph, or whatever is needed down the graph, like authentication information.
Yeah, that's a great way of explaining it.
Yeah, and it also runs before any of the resolvers run. So in situations where like an API might be completely locked down, if there's no authorization headers or whatever the logic is, you can exit early essentially. And so you're making sure that the entire graph of execution is protected as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So the what we want to do here essentially is we want to get the token off the request, and if there's a token, then we want to verify it. Otherwise, since this is where we have to be a little bit careful, because we don't want to reject. Just because there's not a token doesn't mean we want to error out, right? Because there are publicly available queries and mutations.
Yep.
So what we want to do is, if there's not a token, just don't add, set is authenticated to false, basically.
Got it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Or just return it. So the way that we can do that is we can just define is authenticated up here as false. And we can go ahead and, for our context, we can just return is authenticated. And then everything in the middle will be trying to see if there's a token, and if so, then verifying it. And then only throwing an error if the token is malformed, basically, or incorrect. If it's being hijacked or something like that.
For sure. Okay. This also makes sense.
Yeah. So the way we can, let's wrap this stuff in a try catch, because that way, if there's a problem with the token, we'll throw an error there. Man, the the auto format makes it rough for the pair programming stuff, because it's like if you try to explain something for like 10 seconds, it just like formats everything for you. Yep. So the first thing we want to do is we want to pull off the header.
Right.
So since we're doing the server side first, we're not really getting to see what the client's going to do, but the client is going to add an authorization header, and that header, it's going to look like this. There's going to be authorization, and then there's going to be this thing that says bearer, and then like token. A whole bunch of stuff, which is like a JWT.
And so this is a common pattern for using header-based authorization. It's what most APIs expect, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's very, very common pattern for doing this stuff. Oh, we got Chris was here for a sec, and I'm just catching up on the
Yeah,
chat.
yeah, yeah. A bunch of people tuned in.
And
I'm
oh,
so
Will
excited.
Johnson was just talking about you, Will. Awesome. So really glad you're here, Will. And oh yeah, I should say, so we have cats and we have chickens, and so whenever Amy goes out to feed the cats and chickens, she now says, "Hey, all you cool cats and chickens," and
That's
it's like the
amazing.
nerdiest thing ever.
It is, but it is also amazing. I love it. Oh, all you cool cats
Okay.
and chickens. We also have cats, and we're getting chickens once we get our fence. So
Chickens are a lot of fun.
yeah,
They're really enjoyable. They're like, they have the same kind of like cathartic effect as like watching fire, because
yeah.
they're like just so, I don't know.
Birds in general, I felt the same way about like pigeons in New York City when I used to work in the city. I would go have lunch sometimes at the park and just like watching the patterns of like pigeons and how they walk and move around is fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, they're just a lot of fun.
Isn't that in like A Beautiful Mind, right? Isn't he like start writing an equation for the movement patterns of the birds
Oh yeah, you're right. He
in the
does.
courtyard or something, right? Yeah,
Forgot about that.
yeah. That was me,
Yeah.
but it would probably not be called A Beautiful Mind. It would probably be like The Worst Mind because the worst dev.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so that's what we're gonna be getting back. I'll just like leave that as a comment. So we can pull off that header by saying request.headers.authorization. And then it's a good idea, just in case it doesn't exist, to just go ahead and like get an empty string, so that we don't throw, because if there's not a authorization header, then we don't want to break everything. We just want
Yeah.
to say that there's an empty string there. So then we can say if we have an auth header, and that will prevent that, this will not pass if it's an empty string, because it's just going to be empty, so that'll be falsy.
Yeah.
Then if so, then we want to pull off that token. So we're going to, what we need to do though is, since we have this bearer, we need to split that out. So we're going to say we're going to split on the
Bearer.
space, and that should give us an array that has bearer and the rest of the token. And so we'll get the first element out of that array, or it's the second element, but the first index.
Got it.
And now what we need to do is actually verify the token. So
Yeah.
I cheated on this because this is a longer process. So I didn't want to type this up on camera.
Who
So
wants to
let me
type it
just
up at
walk
all?
through.
Period.
What'd you
Who
say?
wants to type it up at all? Period. Put it in a gist
I know.
for
I mean, the
future
thing is that
use.
like, yeah, like it's the same thing every time. So
Yeah.
I just want to walk through it so that people can see what's
Yeah.
happening. But once you know how this is done, then it's going to be done pretty much the same way every
Well, that's
time.
funny. You should make a
Um,
snippet and like I wonder if can you share like VS Code snippets?
you probably
I mean, you could
can.
just make
I
it a
mean,
package, but like if it's the same thing every
yeah.
time, right? Boom.
Yeah, because the thing is, yeah. So what's interesting is like, if you're running a regular Express server, then there's we have a middleware for
That will
Express
do
that
it.
just does all this. Like you don't see any of it. You basically pass in some configuration, and it does basically exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
and sends back. It's a middleware, so it just nexts into the next thing. And so that's what you slap on your Express endpoint. And we could, I guess theoretically, we could be running Apollo like on an Express, run what is that, Apollo Express or whatever, to like just add it onto an Express server. But in this case, like there's not really any reason to do that.
Yeah.
Like we may as well just use Apollo server. And so we kind of have to make our own little middleware here. But we're actually still using, both of these packages are actually made by Auth0.
Oh, cool.
But they're, open
Right.
source packages that have been
So
around for a really long
something
time.
that could be interesting would just be, I mean, like you already have the idea of middleware, but you could make another one that wraps around the context function. Um,
Oh yeah.
right? Because then I could just
Yeah, that's
import that, wrap with the Auth0 function, and I'm done. And like it would still pass on the context, and so then I could just behave like it's not even there. It's just add that little function call around it.
yeah, that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea because yeah, this is the kind of thing that it makes sense to package up
Yeah.
because you're really not gonna. I mean, because you would pass in this same configuration to the middleware, and then everything else is like pretty much the same. So what's happening here is I mentioned that the JSON web key set, and what this is like you can actually go to this site and see this. I mean, it's not very interesting, but it's the public keys for the tokens that the Auth0 server is creating for you.
Right.
So what you need to do is you need to use this client to go grab that key,
Okay.
basically, and that's what we can use to then verify it.
Got
So
it.
we call this jwt.verify, and we pass in the token that got passed to us from the client, the key got from Auth0, which is
From
the public key,
yeah.
and then we also give it the configuration, basically the audience, the issuer, and the algorithm that was used. And that way, and basically this jwt.verify will decode it all for you.
Got it. And so it can handle like it just expects like it will work with a async function for the function that you're passing in for the client key to get the client key. Cause
Yeah, so this part is the part that's is like a little bit tricky because so like this jwt.verify, this was written by one of our architects, and it can handle a lot of different scenarios.
for
And
sure.
so when you're using it with the JSON web key set, you have to have this callback, this like async callback. So that's why I'm doing this like promise,
Hmm.
to where like we can do this all asynchronously, and we'll see in a second that this way we can await this
Yeah, the
this
get
function. You know
client
what I
key.
mean?
Yeah.
Because we have to
Yep.
do the get client key is asynchronous, but then also this verification and everything is asynchronous.
Got it.
So um, so a lot of async things happening here.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
what
But
this will do,
yeah. I mean, I can't really think of any other way that it wouldn't be. Like even if you were doing auth yourself and like with a database, like you still have to do async processes to handle all of
right?
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only synchronous scenario is like if you were creating the token yourself on the same server, you would have the private key right there, and so you
Oh, that's true.
reading from memory like the private key.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, with GraphQL, it's actually not that common to do that. Like
Right.
usually the GraphQL server is not the same server that's creating the token. I've just found like in the real world, it might be in sort of like a demo project, but like most of the time the problem that GraphQL is solving is the data layer problem. It's not really like
The
it's not
authorization authentication
functioning as like
problem.
also the the auth server. So like
Yeah.
this would be really you would use this exact same pattern if you were using a different service or if you had made your own or if like your company has its own identity
Yeah.
provider or something.
Okay.
So that's happening in the verified token. So if I hop back over to the code here, what we'll do is we're going to get that payload and we're just going to await that verify token. So we're going to need to import that. Let's const verify token
I learned
equals
something
require.
neat about VS Code today, and I think if you like control click on things, sometimes it will like bring up the like that helper menu,
Oh
and
yeah,
sometimes it has like auto import options. Maybe not. We might not see it here too. I don't know.
it
Yeah.
definitely does for some things.
But not everything.
Doesn't seem like it does it for everything.
It's probably
So
things that are typed that like it can
yeah,
figure out.
so we're gonna wait the verify token and pull the payload out of it, passing in the token that we split out. So we're gonna pass it this part basically,
Right.
which is gonna be the JWT. So it actually will have two dots. It'll look different than this, but that's okay. And um, and then we will basically set is authenticated based on this. So if there's a payload, then it's basically true. Otherwise, it's false. But what will happen? This is going to throw an error. If something's wrong, this will throw an error, which will trigger this catch.
Got it. So even if it fails authentication, that's an error, and so then we'll end up in the catch. Is that correct?
Yeah. Cool. I kind of also like to make sure that this payload is like somewhat well formed. So
like valid.
I don't know if you necessarily need to do this. I'm gonna talk to the team that made this the JWT library if you need to do this. So the sub claim on a JSON web token is sort of like a user ID.
It's
like
ID, right? The unique identifier.
It'll come back. Sub is gonna look from Auth0. It's gonna look like this. There's gonna be like a Auth0 with a pipe and then like a bunch of crazy letters and numbers. But it's basically the user ID. And so I'm checking if we have a payload and it's like what I'm expecting it to be.
Yeah, it's the shape.
It's probably not necessary to do this. I'm probably being overly cautious there.
Gotcha.
Because if it's malformed, it's going to throw this error and put us in this console.error.
Yeah.
And that's what we want, because we only want an error if we've got like a bad token, basically. We don't really want to.
Or we've hit like a real problem, like a execution error.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty much it from that side. So now we should be able to just
it seems like we're still getting an error though. It says in the terminal that the app is not running. So something might be off.
Let me check. It might have been I think my import is messed up. Hold on. Oh, I missed a folder there.
Ah, there we go.
.source / utils / verify token. There we go.
And it's running.
Cool. So now we should be able to just protect our resolver. So do you want to, should we do this ourselves, or do we want to use that package that you wrote? Or
it's up to you.
We're not really dealing with any permissions yet, so
yeah, I think let's keep it as simple as possible. Less layers of abstraction, the better. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So right now, what's happening is we've got a token and we're setting is authenticated. So now we can go into our resolvers, and on the create habit one, we can pull out that is authenticated from our context. So remember, it goes parent, arguments, context. What's the last one? Info or something, but nobody uses info.
Info is detail. A lot of tools use info more than anything else.
So we're gonna have our context here. You might see people do it as CTX, and we can destructure the is authenticated from the context. Basically, that's how that works. Sometimes destructuring can look like really magical if you're not sure like what's there. It's like so we're gonna have access to is authenticated, and we can just put a check here to say like, hey, if we're not authenticated, then well, I don't know why my formatting is all crazy.
Yeah, probably.
We're not. So Apollo actually comes with a like authentication error, right?
It does. Yes.
Just gotta like, I don't know why it's not giving me the autocomplete. But
maybe because of the live share.
Yeah, it might be. So I think we can just pull it from here, right? Yeah. So
I think so. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So we can say throw a new authentication error and say like not logged in.
Boom.
So this is good. So now we should be able to go back over to the app, like go back over to the React app.
Yeah.
And if we try to add a new habit, we should get an error, right?
Yeah, let's see. Floss, feed chickens. What else? Feed the cats. And so actually first, before I hit enter, I'm just going to crack open the dev tools and go to the network tab that we can see what kind of response we get. Okay. So, not logged in. So it wasn't handled very graciously yet on the client, but hey, we're not logged in because we weren't expecting that from the client before we could just do whatever we wanted, right? So
Right.
now, yeah, so we've got our
Now,
error and we're not logged
and
in
one thing to note is that like that pop-up is only like if you click that X, that pop-up only shows up in
because it's an
dev.
error. Yeah, because it's in dev
Yeah,
mode. Yeah. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not going to
Like
bring down
because
your app.
there is like an error display on the client. Like if you close that, I've got like it shows the error
Yep.
there, and that's the only thing that would show up like in
And so I'm
production.
showing that now, and it's also why I want to have the network tab open because our fetch, our request is actually a 200 status code. Because the way that
Right.
GraphQL works is it sends post requests, and as long as like the request is solid, it's not going to treat that as like an error, so it's not going to change the status code. It's still going to come back as 200. However, it is going to have the errors property in the response, which will have a breakdown of all the different errors. And so you can't see it here, but I've got, it opened and it's showing the extensions, like where it's coming from. It shows you the location. So if I dig down into this, it's like column 2 and line 3. So that's like in the path is create habit. So like it tells you the path through your tree as well, which is really cool because like talk about dialing in on an error. So that was
Yeah.
extremely easy to
I really
implement. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's one thing I'm really liking about GraphQL is like how much control over the error handling you have
Yes.
because like you don't necessarily want to throw 500 of like everything is
Right.
broken like just because they don't have a token,
Yep.
like
And
there there's different layers of like how what kind of errors you want to throw
and
here.
it's also a matter of helpfulness. So like for me as a developer in a REST world, like and everything is not going to be a 500. There's 400, 401, 402, 403. Like there's a code, a status code for something about like returning a teapot, right? Like I'm a teapot. The joke one that's in there. But my point being is that you need a very innate amount of knowledge and like a very good understanding of that stuff like as a whole in order to be able to work with it effectively, whereas on the reverse side with GraphQL instead it's actually guiding the user directly to where the error is. There's no code they have to Google to figure out like what the problem is. So it's a more direct path to the
Right.
solution as well. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so that's cool. So let's see here. Um, so I think the next thing that we could do, here's what might be fun. How would you feel about, let's actually use the GraphQL auth library now. So because we're inside of um, the resolver, but like maybe let's take a look at what it would take to abstract that and move that logic so the resolver never even runs if you're not authenticated.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And so,
So
yeah, so I'll bring it up here. Actually, let me just put it in the chat as well. Let me do this. GitHub.com. So shameless like self plug, but I dealt with GraphQL auth many times in this exact scenario where you have a half like public routes as well as private routes. And so I wrote a kind of like a middleware or a higher order function that allows you to wrap and authenticate queries or mutations, anything that follows the resolver function. I guess what would you call that? Like interface. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. So it's essentially we can call it with auth. It supports scope. But you don't have to pass it. So what it does is we add on the context a property called auth, right? And that's going to look for is authenticated and scope if you want that. And then it's as easy as wrapping the resolver. So if we look at this route without scope, and then if there's no auth.is authenticated, then it will reject. So I guess would be the next step would be to let me jump back to VS Code. We have a terminal open. Do I have access? I don't, so I'm gonna request that.
All
Uh,
right.
let's see. Hey Julio, yes, this will be available later. It is going to be recorded. You can actually come back and watch these on Twitch for a couple weeks. And I also will be uploading to YouTube, and all of the previous streams are available on Apollo's YouTube channel. Yeah. Okay, cool. So are we using npm or yarn? Do I need to be in like a different directory?
I'm in npm, and then yeah, you want to cd into the server folder.
Okay. All right, so I'm in server. So I'll do npm I GraphQL auth. And so while that's happening, the one change that we're going, that was super fast.
That was really fast.
I mean, it is.
Maybe it's because I'm not the one running
Yeah,
OBS.
yeah. And it is also one file and has like the only dependencies are the build dependencies. So it's that's the other great thing about it is like what it's doing is super transparent. So the things that we need to change though, we have to make an adjustment. So right here we're returning on the context an object, and we have is authenticated as the property. However, so also should we be returning what's already on context and not just is
Oh,
authenticated?
yeah, you're right.
So here's what I like
We,
to do.
yeah, spread out.
Yeah, so we could do rest to capture that, and then we can, oops, my bad, I was in the wrong spot. We can do rest again, rec, to reattach
Yep,
that,
yep.
and is authenticated. Now, what the change that I'm going to
Yeah, good
make,
call.
yeah, is the library, oops, man, it keeps jumping in my mouse. That's new. Um,
Yeah.
the library expects that GraphQL auth library expects an auth property with is authenticated. And so that's because it's kind of
Ah,
taking over the
okay.
namespace of auth, right? Like on context,
I
essentially.
see.
So that is the change we need to make there. Then we're going to import this. So let's see, do it up here with the other this. So I want to say it's like the default export. I can't even remember. It's been a little while. Require GraphQL auth. And so now we have with auth. I'm going to actually jump back to the browser and make sure that, yeah, okay. So now, what the change that I imported this in the wrong place.
Oh, yeah, because we're going to put it in the resolver.
Exactly. So we go over to the resolvers, and we'll come over here, and I'll just drop it here for now. And so what we're going to do, and create habit is the one, right? That's the one we want to
Yep.
do. So we are going to, oh, oops, I put this in the wrong spot. This goes here.
Ah,
So that wraps around this function. So now that will be like that. Wait a minute. This becomes
oh, we probably,
that.
yeah, yeah.
There we go. And then we wrap this here. There we go.
Yes.
So now that that's in, I can remove this.
I think we need,
oh, thank you.
There we go. Yep. Yep.
Okay. And
okay, and then we don't need so with auth is going to automatically pull it out. Do we need this?
oh, sorry, yeah, we don't need that. So it's going to check under the
yeah,
hood.
we don't even need that.
Yeah, it's going to check under the hood. So if we jump back to the browser and we look at what's going on here, I thought I had like a demo, but we can actually look at the source code because it's extremely small. Let me blow this up a little bit. So the main part is that we're going to return an authorization error, which is defined in here, but it's basically going to be the same thing. That's not authenticated if there's no context.auth is authenticated. So that line is the gist of it right there. And so let's jump back, and this should, oh, we're already in Chrome, should be working.
It looks like we've got a, we're getting an error. It's saying cannot find module Babel runtime core promise.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that terminal 1?
Yeah, the server terminal. So I wonder if
GraphQL build.index index. That's interesting. Okay. Well, what
I'm gonna try just like running npm start again and seeing since we install the package. Nope, that doesn't change
there's
anything.
definitely something up with that module itself. Why is it looking for Babel runtime core.js promise?
Yeah, that's weird.
It is weird, but you know what I don't want to do? Spend time debugging this. I'll have to look at that later. I'm wondering if it's like has something to do with node versions. I haven't updated this in a while, so I haven't had like a use like I haven't used it in a while personally, so it might just need some TLC. So I'll have to come back to that.
Yeah.
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 So let's do this.
Okay. Well, we can revert.
Exactly.
We can try that again another time. That's okay.
Yeah. Actually, I'll stream that at some point. I'll just redo it.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's back out of these changes. Okay. So that got us.
Yeah.
There.
You should stream debugging that.
Actually, I really will. But we also want to keep this part. So I'm gonna keep.
Yeah, keep the returning of the other stuff because that's useful. Yeah. And actually, I mean, it probably isn't a bad idea. Like, so in the real world, you'd probably also do something like where you'd have let user equal null, and you'd probably still do this auth thing because you'd want like auth and then user and is authenticated.
That's generally what I do. Yeah.
Like generally speaking, what you would do is after you do is authenticated, you would go get the user from the database or whatever. Like you could either have, it sort of depends on how you're set up. You could either have Auth0 send
the user data
like an enriched profile, depending on how you have it set up, or it could send. I mean, you can choose how you want to do it. You might also have like more user information in your own database somewhere, and so you would go get that and like set the user, all that. So in this scenario, we've only got one user, which is me, and so we're not really doing that. So I like this pattern of having the auth object with things like user and is authenticated and stuff like that. So yeah, good catch on the context there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think then we're good there. So real quick though, it just hit me unexpected. We got to take a super quick break. I just have to run and use the bathroom, and then like we'll be right back.
Oh yeah,
all right, cool. Problem. Yeah, so give us 1 second and we'll be back. Right? All right. Thanks for bearing with us, everybody, and we are back. So
Yeah. So
yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Continue on.
I think we're pretty much done with the
Yeah.
server side.
Yeah. That's looking good. That seems
Um,
to be working. And so I think the next part is setting up the client so we can get like the full loop-de-loop going.
yeah.
All right.
All right. Let's.
Yeah. Let's do that.
All right. So client's good. So now we want to go over. I mean, the server's good. So now we want to go over to the client, and I've got some components
Oh, the
already
client code.
sorted
Right.
for us.
Oops.
But what we do need to do is add all of the Auth0 stuff. So, a couple things we need to do. First of all, we are using. Let me pull up the package JSON here. We are using the Auth0 Spa.js SDK. So that's already installed here. And then we're also going to need this Apollo link context for the to be able to add the token to the outgoing request. So I've already installed those here, so we don't have to worry about them. We also will need React Router DOM for the history stuff that it provides. So just to give you a heads up on that.
All right.
But I didn't want to take the time to npm install those.
Yeah, sure.
On
No
camera,
worries. I don't think I'm following you anymore. I don't really see it showing up.
It's still showing you on the thing, so maybe
I'm
you just
stuck
need to
in
click.
server, or maybe I wasn't because I wasn't focused. Are you still in server JS?
No.
Oh, there we
I'm
go.
in
I wasn't
Auth.
following you.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. So yeah. So what we need to do is get basically Auth0 set up here. So there's a couple parts to this. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to use hooks and context to build a provider. And some of this I'm going to copy and paste in because it would take a while to set up, but I'll do it in pieces so that we can actually understand what's happening here. So we're gonna basically build a context. So we're gonna say we're gonna create an Auth0 context, and we're gonna use React create context.
Gotta love context.
Gotta love context. Yeah. Basically, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a context. We're gonna wrap our app in it, and then we're going to do some fancy stuff with wrapping up the Apollo client to send our token and everything. Nice. So we'll also do. We're gonna create an Auth0 hook, and so we'll say use context Auth0 context. And now we need to build out the provider. And here's where I'll probably copy and paste some things just to save us some time.
Yeah.
So we're going to build out this big function or function component basically for the provider. We're going to need our children. We're also going to need to, I got to turn off this auto format really quick because this is driving me bonkers.
Yeah, do your thing.
Workspace settings. Format on save, I think is what it's called.
I think
so. No, what's the auto save?
I thought it was
auto save. Oh, here we go. Auto save delay. That's what I want. I want
Oh, you have that set. Yeah, that'll do it.
I'm gonna set this for 10 seconds basically to give me some time. Okay. That should help. That always drives me crazy when I'm doing streams or videos.
Yeah.
Okay, we're also going to need to define a redirect callback, and so we can have a default for that. And I'm just gonna copy this in because
yeah.
So what this is doing basically is we have the ability. We're not really going to use it in this app because we're not doing multiple routes, but we have the ability to send the app back to where we started from when we start the login process.
Okay.
And that's what this is for.
Interesting.
It'll check. Yeah, it'll check for redirecting back the application. We're also going to be passing in a bunch of initialization options to this provider, and that's what everything that was in like here, where we have like the Auth0 config stuff. We're going to be doing that.
Got it.
In just a bit.
Okay.
And so then inside of our provider, we're going to define a bunch of hooks, and I'm just going to drop these in.
Nice.
And so we're gonna have a bunch of state in this provider of whether we're authenticated, our user, the Auth0 client, whether we're loading, and then if we're using login with pop-up, which we're not in this example, but if we are, then we can have some state for the login.
Can you clarify for me for 1 second what that means? Login with pop-up? Maybe people aren't familiar.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways you can log into a single page app. You can either like open a pop-up to like go get the token and bring it back, or you can do a redirect where it redirects the application to the provider, and then the provider redirects you back to the application.
Got it.
And they're kind of pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
I think the kind of the more common one is to do the redirect. It just sort of depends on your use case.
Okay.
So now what we need to do is define an effect. So we're going to say use effect. And this use effect is going to do a bunch of stuff for us. It's going to basically initialize the client, and it's going to set all of our initial state and all of that good stuff. So because this is going to be like an asynchronous thing, we have to do that thing where we define a function. Like, so you can't ever make an effect an async function.
Right.
So we have to define an async function to do all that stuff for us. And then we're just going to call init auth0 at the bottom of the effect.
Absolutely.
And this effect is not going to be dependent on anything. And so chances are your ESLint is going to complain about this. So I always have to just add this ESLint, because normally you don't do this where you pass no dependencies in this effect.
But in this case,
in our case, yeah, we want this to run when the app runs, basically. So like it's really only going to end up running one time when the app loads, and that's why
that's fine, but that's what
empty.
we want. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to kind of override React there a little bit and tell like, yes, this is what we want.
Hey, I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so then inside of here, the first thing we want to do is we want to initialize the client. So we're going to create this variable called auth0 from hook.
Okay.
And we're going to wait the function called create auth0 client, which is a function provided by the SDK. We actually imported it up here from the SPA SDK.
Got it.
So what this will do is this will initialize the client for us, and then we're passing in all our config options, which will be like the tenant and the client ID and the audience and all that stuff. And then we can, since we're going to keep track of that, we're going to do that set auth0 and define that. And what's cool about this is like we're going to be able to import use auth0 from places, which will have our context, and we're going to use all of these things as values on the context. So we'll be able to just pull out like whether we're authenticated or the user or anything else, like just from a hook. It's going to be like really sweet.
Primo.
The next thing we need to do is, since this is going to run when the app loads, we need to check if we're in the middle of a redirect. So if the app has just been redirected from auth0, it's going to have these things in the window location. It's going to have code and state, because basically that means that auth0 has sent us a code which we then exchange for the token.
Right. Yeah.
So we check for the code and the state, and if we do have them, then we're going to call Auth0 and tell it to basically go get the token
And it's
for
just
us.
going to handle
the
this
nice,
under the hood, right? And it's going to pull the code
yeah.
information out of the location, go pass that information back to Auth0, get the token. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, like it's actually like, so this first, like, defining this provider seems like it's a lot of work. But you literally, I'm only kind of typing and pasting it just to make it, like, just to explain it
Yep.
all, but you can literally basically copy and paste this. And like, yeah, Auth0 handles it handles the whole thing behind the scenes. Like, you don't have to worry about like dealing with the token or storing the token or anything. Like the SPA SDK handles all of
Got
this.
it.
And in fact, we have plans. It's still like in discovery phase, but we're planning on trying to extract this as its own package and like make a React like hooks
Yes.
package so
Nice.
that you won't even have to do that.
That's cool.
That's coming down the pipe at some point. So if we do, if we are in that, then we handle all of that. And what's going to come back from that is something called app state. And that's where we can learn where we're sending the user. Like, so if they were on a particular page, then we could actually send them back to that page.
Got it.
In our case, we're not really going to do that, but And then lastly in here, we need to set up like kind of all of our, or not in here, in the provider, we just need to set up like a bunch of initial state, like whether
or not
if we're authenticated.
Yeah.
If we are authenticated, then go get the user for us, which is the payload of the ID token. And then
Finally.
at the end of all of this, set our loading state to false.
Got it.
And then I'm going to paste in, there's a couple of functions that we also would need in here, which are we're not going to use the login with pop-up, but basically the handle redirect callback.
Yeah, I saw that call to it, but I didn't see it defined. So here it is. Got it.
Yeah, so there's two. Yeah, so the client itself has a handle redirect callback, and then we can define a handle redirect callback that will also take into account all of the state that we need to manage.
So basically wrapping that and adding a little bit more.
Basically wrapping that in a function.
Okay.
And then finally, we just need to return the provider.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna do return. Oops. And auth0 context.provider, and define our value. And let me just do that. That's our children. And inside of this value, we're going to do all of the state that we created here. We're also going to do the two functions that we've defined up there, which are basically wrappers. And then there are some functions on the SDK that we basically want to expose to the rest of the application. And so what we do is we do this, where we basically define a function and spread the arguments, and then basically just call the SDK directly. So like with the login with redirect, or getting the token, or logging out, that way we can just pull that straight out of our hook and just handle that directly. And again, the only reason we're taking the time to like write all this out is to explain it, but you can literally just copy and paste this into your React app, and you won't have to worry about it.
TM should just work.
Yeah, it pretty much just worked. All you really need is the configuration stuff. Lastly, for this, and I'm just going to paste this in, but we need, in order for that redirect stuff to work, we just need this history. Again, we're not really doing it in this app, but it'll break things if we don't have it set up. Right. So,
but in most apps, you will be routing. You will have history. And
pretty much all. Yeah, anything real world, you're going to be redirecting the user to different places. Right. This is just such a simple app that we're not going anywhere else.
Okay, cool.
So now we need to do sort of the the trickier bits of like getting the token into Apollo. Actually, before we do that, the first thing we need to do is actually add our
provider, right?
Auth0 to, yeah, add the provider to the index here. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and let's go ahead and import Auth0 provider from our auth utility here. And for now, we're gonna wrap the Auth0 context dot, or no, Auth0 provider. Yeah.
Nice.
We're just gonna wrap the whole
Apollo
thing.
Boom.
In there. And here's where we need all of our stuff from our configuration.
Right.
So we're gonna need the domain. I'll just paste some of this stuff in.
Cool.
So we'll need the domain, which is the tenant, the
client ID,
the audience, which is our GraphQL API. We're going to pass in a default a redirect URL of just the window location. You could pass in anything else you want. We also need to define, remember in the provider here, we have this prop of on redirect callback. So we need to actually define that as well. So up here, we'll just, and you could really define this wherever you want, but we'll just go ahead and define it up here.
Yeah.
And it's going to receive that app state, which is the result of the processed like token and everything. And we'll just do history.push and check and see like if there's an app state, and if so, then is there a target URL in that app state? And if so, then take us to that. Otherwise, just take us to like wherever we already are.
Got it.
So that's just sort of a. So you could. So we show this in the React Quick Start to show like how to customize it. You could just like define this in the auth provider. Like if this is the way you want to do your handle redirect callback. Like,
yeah, there's no reason to surface it here.
Yeah.
If you don't need to.
Exactly. Yeah. This is just sort of to give you the option of doing it that way. And so, so then you do something, then you actually like pass in the callback that you want. So that's sort of whether you want to expose that or not.
And that's in the provider, we set a default function anyway to handle that, right? Is that
exactly? Yeah. We already did that. So you could basically replace this default function. You could just like anywhere that this on redirect callback is referenced. See, it's referenced down here. Right. You could just define that. If you wanted to, you could just define that on this provider itself. Mm-hmm. But we've exposed it so that you can configure it. Maybe you want to use it a different way. Maybe you want to call it from other places, all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
So, okay. So now we've got like everything is running. Let's test just logging in. Let's go over to our app, and I've got let's just add a little like login situation here where below our thingy, like we can actually now go and grab the use Auth0 hook from our auth. So if we import use Auth0, then inside of our app we can actually pull out the is authenticated. We could also pull out like whether we're loading. So we'll call this auth loading since we already have loading from Apollo, and just say use Auth0.
That's so cool.
And so, yeah, it's like really sweet because now beneath our H2, we can just say, if we're not authenticated, then give me a button of type button And on click, oh, we also can pull out
that function,
the
right?
log in with redirect.
Yeah.
And also
Log out.
log out. So we can just say on click, log in with redirect. And you can pass it options like the app state options. For our purposes, we're just going to leave it the way it is. So we can do that. And then let's also display something here. So let's say if we are authenticated, then we want to go ahead and, oh, let's grab the user out. That way we can
yeah, personalized.
get there, personalize it. So like once you have the hook set up, it actually is like pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah, so
like,
yeah, of course you do the work up front, and now boom, you just got this hook that you can pull in anywhere in your app. Grab the user, grab authentication status. I would imagine because Auth0 also uses scopes, right? So scopes would become available to you here as well, and all kind of different stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So and then we can let's also have a logout button. I'll paste in. I've got a little logout button here. And then let's also go ahead and just move add habit into here.
Yeah, because if they're not authenticated, boom.
Yeah. So what we should see when we open the app is we should see if we're logged in, we should see a welcome with the logout button and the add habit form. And if we're not logged in, we should see just the login with the list of habits. So you want to
I got unexpected use of history, no restricted globals.
Okay, so we must have forgotten
line
something.
15.
Index line 15. Where are we? Oh, I didn't import. We got to import
the React
history.
Yeah.
Import
browser history or something, right?
/utils/history. I think it's, yeah, there we go. That should do it. And it's still getting it. Where is it?
So
create browser history. I must have. Let me look here.
I think it says somewhere like calling history. So maybe
create browser history from history. That should just be coming from React Router DOM, I believe. Just looking at my other one to see if I've forgotten something. Import, export default, create browser history. Oh, it's a default import. It's not a named import. So I should be able to do this, import history.
History, got it.
There we go. That should
right, and because it's in the browser, it was saying like, yep, there we go. And I got a login button.
Sweet. So you should be able to, I guess I didn't think about that. You should be able to create an account on my tenant and actually like log in.
I'm trying it now. I just press the button.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not, I don't think it's firing. Hang on. Console. Cannot read property. Log in with redirect of undefined.
Okay, we might have, let's see. Might have messed up an import.
Different name. Yeah.
Yeah, let me see here. So
am I still following you? Yes, perfect.
Login with redirect.
Auth0 client, is that not the same name? Did we ever set that?
Yeah, it should be coming from the context, so it should be coming from use Auth0.
All right.
So it should be login with redirect. Use Auth0 from. What are we missing here? Let me see. Login with redirect. Import use Auth0.
Let's see. Did it say what line it was? Yeah,
did I type
82.
again with redirect?
Pretty sure it's that Auth0 client that it's saying is undefined.
Oh, you know what it... Oh, yeah. Hold on. Because I'm getting it too.
So use effect. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Set auth. Oh, auth. Oh, I think I figured it out. Line 24. Oh, no. Set auth0. Never mind. That's right.
Set auth0.
Set.
Let's see. I must have a typo somewhere or
something.
Yeah,
but where is auth0 client coming from?
Oh, yeah. Where
You have auth0 from hook. Should that be?
Oh, yeah, that's what it should be.
Boom. This is why I love one streaming, two pair programming. So
I know, like the VS Code. Okay, yeah. So now you should be able to like.
Oh yeah, and so now, here we go. So I'm just gonna sign in with Google. I authorize you, habit tracker. Boom, and look at that. I got welcome Kurt Kemple, log out button, and let's see if I can feed cat. Boom. Oh,
Sweet.
Oh, interesting. It said not logged in though, so I think that's just on. Oh, I know why. I think if we go to the resolver, we're still doing is authenticated, not auth.is authenticated.
Oh yeah, that's true. We also haven't attached the token yet.
Oh, right. So that wouldn't work either. So both.
Yeah. So we have a couple things we need to clean up, but we're almost there. We're actually like pretty close.
I know. I love this.
So let's see.
Which one are you going to do first? Let me follow you again. Oops. There we go.
Got another error here.
Oh, on the client?
Yeah, but I think maybe it's just behind or something because it was fixed.
Yeah, it seems good on my side.
Offloading. Let's see. Oh, I never do. Yeah, I'm going to add a check for auth loading here too, because that can make it a little bit nicer experience. Okay, I think we've got the client up and running here.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm just
with the token? Did I miss that? Did you add the token as well?
No. I was just saying, like, I was getting a weird error for some reason.
Got it.
Okay, so so now what we need to do is, first let me just hop back over to that resolver so that we can clean that one part up, because here we go. Yeah, so now we're pulling auth off of that and saying if auth.is authenticated, right?
Yeah.
Is that what we called it?
Auth.is authenticated. Yep, that should be it.
Okay.
Cool. So we're back. We would still fail, but now it's a proper check.
Right. So now the reason that it's failing is because we're not sending the token back with the rest of the request.
Right.
So the way we need to do that is we need to go back to index.js in the client, and we need to basically add some Apollo middleware, essentially. So the way there's like different ways you could accomplish that. What I was doing yesterday was creating like a wrapper basically for Apollo, and basically moving like our client creation and everything. We could probably get away with. Well, no, the reason we have to do that is because we need the Auth0 hook, and we can't access that in just like index.js. We need to define a function, whether we do it, or like a functional component, whether we do that here or in a separate file. So I'm going to go ahead and just create Apollo wrapper.js.
Love it.
and we're gonna move the Apollo client import. We're gonna move the Apollo client definition.
Boom.
Because what we want to do is we're going to stick all of this into a component and call it Apollo wrapper with the children and move that inside of there. Export default Apollo wrapper.
I'm digging it.
Yes.
We're getting so close too, by the way. This is like.
We're almost done. I mean.
I know. I'm rubbing my fingers, rubbing my hands.
Yeah, we're almost done here. So this is cool because what we can do is we can import use Auth0 from our Auth0 utils/auth, and we can grab our is authenticated, and we can also grab the function to go get the token.
Right.
So there's a way. So Auth0 has this get token silently, which will basically check if the user is authenticated, and if so, just return the token behind the scenes without the user having to do anything. And if they're not, then it'll like force them into the login process.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna create a little piece of state here called bearer token and set bearer token, because we want to.
That's the token we're going to get back, right? From.
Right. We're going to get that back from Auth0, because we're going to create an effect, and and again, we're going to need to. This is all going to be asynchronous. So we're going to create a little async function here for getting the token, and say, hey, define the token. If we're authenticated, then go ahead and go get the token. Get token silently. Otherwise, just return an empty string, and then we'll set the bearer token to that token. So then we can call get token, and we're gonna tell React that we only want this to happen if get token silently changes or if is authenticated changes.
Got it.
Cool. Now we can do the Apollo side of things. So we're gonna split this up because we want to add some middleware here, basically. So.
And so when you say middleware, we're going to essentially create our own custom link, right? Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Because what we want to happen is we want to, if we have a token, then we want to add that authorization header to our outgoing request.
Got it.
So I'm going to pull out just the basic link. I can say const HTTP link and then just move this over there.
Okay.
And then we're gonna define this link. So Apollo, and of course you can talk more about this, but Apollo has this ability to create your own, set your own context. So there's the Apollo link context package, and you can use this function called set context, which is going to let us tap into the headers. So we can say const auth link equals set context, and that's going to give us what's the first thing there? Is that the parent context setter?
I can't remember for set context. I would have to go to the docs to look.
Right.
But yeah.
But what it will let us do is get the request. So I assume that the second one is the request if you can pull the headers off of it. And then we can say, hey, if there's not a bearer token, then just return the headers. Although we probably need to return a bunch of other stuff too, right? We probably need to do the same thing where we do
So
like
XDiamond
that.
GMR had a question real quick, which I think we covered,
Yeah.
but just to reiterate again, he's asking what get token silently is doing. So let me see if I can remember this. Whereas
Yeah,
if
good
you
idea.
try to query for the token not with the silently function, there's another way, right, to get fetch the token?
No, yeah, um so get token silently is the way that you get the token from the SPA SDK. Like, so
Right.
instead of
Instead of forcing
the
the
silently
login
part,
path.
yeah. So the silently part is so that you don't have to bother the user if they're already signed in. Like, there's the silently means just go get the token. Like, if the user's already logged in, don't have them do it all behind the scenes,
Right.
basically. So that's why it's called that. In this example, um, yeah, the silently is not really that relevant, but what we're doing is basically like, instead of like, the SDK handles the storage of the token and the like lifetime, like the life cycle of
Got
the
it.
token. Like that way, like, so if you weren't using Auth0, you would pull the token from wherever you're storing it. But
Gotcha.
for our situation, Auth0 is just handling all of that for
And
us.
so
And
it's making
so
sure we still have a valid token. It's not expired. Oh,
exactly.
I just
Yeah, it's doing all of that stuff for you behind the scenes.
okay. For
That's how we're
some
getting the token.
reason, it seems that I have lost your video. Okay, that was crazy.
Yeah, that was weird. I
Oh,
don't know
and
what
now
just
your
happened there.
video is keeps resizing. It just resized and went away.
Oh man. This is what I was having that same problem with Skype.
I mean, it appears to be. Actually, can you talk?
Yeah,
Yeah, your
talking.
audio's coming through, and if anyone in the audience can confirm. But yeah, so
Yeah,
your video just started.
that's
Did
fine. I
you
mean,
change anything on your side?
no, I haven't changed anything since the last time.
Because it's there, but it looks like it's tiny. Let me see what I can do
Yeah, I've had
about this real
um
quick. Okay, so well, that's not any better.
I mean, we don't really
Oh,
need my video as long as the audio is going,
I
because
think I'm fixing you. So I think it's just because it was doing that weird resizing thing.
hmm.
Hang on.
Yeah, I was having this problem with when I did a stream the other day, the guest Skype, the video kept like doing all kinds of
Yeah,
weird things.
I have you back for now. Let's see how this goes. Very frustrating. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. All right,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's continue on. We were so close too. We almost got through this. It was almost beautiful. Streaming
Yeah,
is
we're like,
wow. It's something else, right?
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're so close though. We're
Yeah,
like,
yeah. We're very close. All right, cool. Let's keep this
okay,
going.
where we were at was are you still following me on the thing?
Oh yeah, yep. I see you. You're right.
So we
And
need to make sure.
yeah,
I think I missed the same thing that I missed with the other thing, where we got to make sure we're returning everything that we need here.
yeah,
So
yep,
think I think that's sufficient, where we just do the rest like
yep,
that. And then, so if we do have a bearer token, then we want to return. We want the rest of the headers. We also want, I guess we also want this, right? We
yeah.
want everything, but we also want
Give
to
me
add
everything.
on. Yeah, we also want the authorization header, where we do our bearer and then pass in the token. And then to add this middleware, all Apollo needs is to concatenate them. So you do auth_link.concat, so that's this part, and concat it onto HTTP link.
Yeah.
And what we're gonna return from this is the Apollo provider. So we're gonna do Apollo provider. We're gonna pass in our client, and then we'll just have all the rest of the children.
Okay.
I think that's it. So all we need to do, we can get rid of this.
That client, yeah.
And we can get rid of
all that.
this
Yay.
whole deal.
What about the
We're gonna import
provider? No, that's here. Yeah, that's this.
Yeah, we still need that. We're gonna do the Apollo wrapper from the Apollo wrapper, and then we can just change this
to just wrapper.
The wrapper, and let's get rid of.
Cool.
And that should be.
And we're already returning the children,
everything.
Right? In Apollo wrapper.
Yeah, exactly. So the children. So that way we're able to keep passing the app down.
I think we are not exporting. It says Apollo wrapper is not exported from Apollo wrapper.
Oh, I always forget that these are default. I think it's because I bounce between Angular and React so much that like Angular never uses default exports.
Yeah.
And so my brain just goes immediately to named exports.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
use state is not
Apollo
defined.
Use state. Oh, did we not import
Apollo wrapper? Yeah, we didn't import that stuff.
Yeah, we gotta do import React. We need to import use state.
We've got use effect. So
that
should be good, right?
Okay. Yeah, we're good.
Oh, so we are good. Look,
theoretically, theoretically, if you open the dev tools and like log in, so you should be able to send that add habit and inspect it and see the bearer token on the authorization header, and it should work.
Yeah, so let's do that. So feed cats went through before because it's just like local data, so it seems like that's interesting. Like the error still got processed somehow. How did we sneak that one in? We'll feed the dogs. Hey, feed dogs popped up. If I go and look at the requests and we look at the headers, so I'll blow this up in a second for everyone. So what we're looking for is the header for authorization, and here it is. So let me zoom in. So we have this authorization header with the bearer, and then there's our token, and that worked. It is now set. And
beautiful.
Oops, yeah, that is beautiful. So like it's authenticated. We've done it. We've created an authenticated API. Yeah.
So there's a
round of applause for us.
Yeah. There was one clarification question there on the get token silently. Can you flip back over to the code really quick? Because let me just show where that's coming from. Because it's a little bit roundabout to to see it, but down in the provider, the get token silently is here, where we're basically wrapping the client's get token, the SDK's get token silently. We're passing that through as an available thing on the context, and because use Auth0, the hook, is just using use context, that's how we're able to access get token silently. So it's sort of a few different layers, but it is coming from the SDK. And notice there's actually get token with pop up as well. So that's why we have get token silently. So I'm glad that helps, because that is a little, there's a few different hops there to get from the SDK to the actual like hook. So but once it's set up, it's like really cool.
It's a dream. Once this is set up, like this is if we go into the app, I mean, this is so easy. Like this, having this available to you. And again, I just like want to harp on the scopes part again because I think like it can be underplayed how useful that information is within a UI. And don't get me wrong, like the server should be the source of truth and should be able to handle receiving like the information coming from someone who's not authorized. But when you can prevent that from even happening, right? Because you have that information available to you so easily in your client, so you can build UIs around this, right? Like not even have a submit button if they're not properly authorized to do something, right? And so it's, or block entire routes. The possibilities are endless. But yeah, this is beautiful. This makes so easy.
Yeah, I definitely think the next step with this, like if we were to do a two-parter or something, would be to add some scopes and like get a little bit more sophisticated with the users and stuff like that. Now that we have like the basics set up, but building this this was one of those things where like setting aside my day job, just like this combo of Apollo and Auth0, like it sound like such a fanboy, but it actually like was really nice to do. Like
it's very
I really had a
to
good
use.
experience like using this app with Apollo and Auth0. Like it works really well together. Like pretty seamless.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. And so what I tend to do is I would use like Auth0 for the authentication part, and much like you said, have a user object that might have more information stored in the GraphQL layer, but that all that stuff becomes so easy to come back. Like you can have like a me query, that is scoped directly to that identity. It's so nice, so easy to do. And in simpler apps, there's been apps that I've built where I've used just Auth0 because you can store data on the user as well. If you don't need very much,
right,
you could do it. So I made like a weather app. People could sign up and sign in, and their favorite locations were stored in Auth0.
Nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool.
But this is awesome. Thank you for doing this. And like, don't threaten me with a good time. If you want to do a part 2 follow-up, we should definitely figure that out. I would love to see where we can take this. I'm sure everybody else would love to see that example as well. And do you have anything you want to fill everyone in on before we go? Maybe like if Auth0 also does streams, if you got anything upcoming or anything like that you want to share?
Yeah, so we've got on the official Auth0 channel on May 5th, Tyler from my team, Tyler Clark, will be hosting Gatsby, someone from Gatsby.
Nice.
So that is, Tuesday the 5th. I think it's at 10 a.m. PST. But we can
and
like.
That's Twitch TV / oh, you beat me to it.
I just beat you to it. Yeah.
I was literally typing it. That's funny.
And then on my channel, which I'll also paste in, next Thursday at around this time, I'm gonna do a stream with my friend Mike Ryan to do using GraphQL with NGRX, which is Angular's version of Redux, basically.
Yeah.
We did it a couple weeks ago and we had a bunch of technical problems, so we're just gonna redo it. And that was pretty cool. We're gonna build like a little GraphQL client from scratch, just like a really oversimplified one, but just it's actually pretty neat. Like building a little thing there. And and then neat. Let's see, anything else. Yeah, we're starting to do a lot of joint streams on the Auth0 channel. So definitely people can come hang out and check that out. And I think we're going to be doing one with Hasura pretty soon. And a lot of other stuff. Oh, there's one other thing I should promote, which is Auth0 has started this thing called Avocado Labs, which is like an online talks. It was sort of born out of the like the quarantine, like the pandemics and everything.
Yeah.
But it basically, the idea was like for all of these online, like all of these events getting canceled, people had a lot of conference talks they had prepared for and know where to give them. So my teammates, Sam and Anna, a different Sam and Anna, put this together, and they're going to be doing, I think, once a month. They're going to have this online meetup, and they've got some. They just had a couple really big names in Angular. They're about to have some other big names giving these online talks. It's totally free, and it's a really cool initiative. So definitely check it out.
Awesome. Very cool. On our side, coming up, we have Launchpad actually in just over an hour. So I'll be back on here with Trevor Blades, and we'll be working on that app that we're building, which is very cool. So we were building a fun job search tracking app. Yeah, and yeah, I think I'll follow up with everything there. Again, thank you so much for joining us, Sam. This was awesome. I had a blast. I really want to
Yeah,
do a
thank
part
you.
two. Yeah, yeah, very cool. All
Yeah,
right, and yeah, with that, we're
cool.
gonna head out. Thank you everyone for joining us, and sorry about those hiccups with the video, but those seem to be settled. All right, but yeah, we will see you later.